Hello, this is Kylie with Fem and Flow. I hope you're having a beautiful day. Today, we are going deeper in on Eros, one of my new favorite currents to explore. Last week, we talked about White Hole Embodiment, Metatronic Light, the Merkaba, and the architecture of Coherence. And this week, we're letting it all spiral inward toward the return current of Source, Eros. If Metatronic light is the structure of creation, Eros is the pulse. It's the divine magnetism that moves everything, the current of union, beauty, and becoming. So let's dive in. Like I said, Eros is the return current of Source. It's what follows the out breath of creation. If Metatronic light is the divine exhale, building form, architecture, coherence, then Eros is the inhale, the magnetic return. It's the pull inward, the current that draws the polarized pieces of God back together in perfect reunion. It does this through attraction to coherence. Eros is how God remembers through you. You don't have to earn it, you just have to feel it. It's already flowing through the spaces where you've come into alignment. If you're listening to this right now, pause and soften your body. Notice the places where you've already come into harmony. Notice the places where you feel wholeness and coherence. That's where Eros lives. Let your breath land there for a moment. And that's it. You don't chase this. You feel it where it already is. And when I say Eros, I don't mean lust or craving or seduction. Those are black hole distortions, the shadows of Eros pulled into fantasy loops, desire signals, and performance fields. True Eros is union. It's the current of presence that arises when your inner masculine and feminine are no longer at war. It's the quiet magnetism you feel when you're in flow. Maybe painting, walking, cooking, resting in your body with no need to prove. Eros is what pours through you when the need to chase disappears. You can feel Eros in stillness. You can feel Eros in eye contact. You can feel Eros when the soul of something touches you. Eros is what you feel when the universe breathes through your body. The Merkaba doesn't spin just because you activate it in your mind. I'll talk about this later, but that's mimicry. Your true Merkaba activates when your body becomes a coherent field. And that coherence begins when your inner masculine and feminine are no longer in conflict, when they're balanced, harmonized, and spiraling together. That's what creates the structural container, the field. And once that field is stable enough, something starts to move through it, and that's Eros. Eros is the magnetic pulse that flows when polarity is resolved. It's not just the result of union, it's the living current of it. And once it arrives, it becomes the charge that animates the field. That's when light starts to move. That's your Merkaba. That's your light body in motion. Eros is not extra. It's the current that flows when you're whole. This balance is what allows your system to become electromagnetically stable, like a tuning fork for divine resonance. And when Eros flows through your field, your reality starts to rearrange around coherence too. Here's the thing the inversion fields never want you to know. Eros disarms distortion. You don't need to fight the black hole matrix. You dissolve it by becoming a field it can't enter. When you anchor Eros, embodied coherence, inner union, the pulse of beauty, there's nothing for the distortion to hook into. The black hole matrix cannot mimic true Eros because true Eros isn't a technique. It's a tone field of divine reunion. And if we think about it this way, in a world of war codes and frequency wars, Eros is a field that can't be weaponized. And that's how powerful it is. And that's how protected you are when you live from this current. So now I want to talk about Eros as the shortcut for collective ascension. Let's talk about white hole stabilizers. I've mentioned this group on other episodes, but I want to really ground in what I mean when I use that phrase, because it's not a metaphor. It's a real role, and if you're listening to this, you might be one. White hole stabilizers are souls who incarnated with the specific blueprint to hold stabilized coherence, and not just for themselves, but for the collective grid. They don't just awaken, they architect the new timeline by becoming a living field of harmonic truth. They stabilize divine frequency in their body, their tone, and their nervous system, and that coherence becomes an accessible portal in the quantum field. They create a shortcut. Because once they've stabilized a new frequency, others don't have to dig through distortion to reach it. They can feel it. They can step into the outcome as a timeline without having to crawl through every layer of the wound. And that's quantum collapse. The stabilizer walks the spiral, becomes the outcome, and suddenly that outcome is available to the collective. And it doesn't take force or persuasion, it just takes presence. So when I say that white hole stabilizers create a shortcut for the collective, this is what I mean. You don't have to convince anyone. You stabilize coherence in your body, and suddenly that tone exists in the field. Others may not know why they feel it, but they'll start to resonate with it. They'll begin skipping unnecessary steps, and not because they're bypassing, but because the bridge was already built. And here's where it ties back to Eros. Eros creates harmonic memory. When that current pulses clearly enough in your body, it becomes a tone field that others remember, even if they've never felt it before. And they're not following you. They're remembering themselves through the frequency you've anchored. You don't teach Eros, you live it, and others remember who they are. And now I want to take a moment to honor the diversity of roles that exist within this awakening spiral. I was commenting back and forth with someone on TikTok, and she asked me how I knew this information. I briefly gave a response back, and she said she had a spiritual awakening 25 years ago and has been learning so much ever since. And this was so beautiful to me and made me think about this larger tapestry we are all weaving together. How we all have different roles and are working toward the same goal. This is the beauty of how the white hole field works. It's not linear, it's spiral. Some souls came earlier, not to build the entire structure, but to hold the field open, to anchor the frequency that would make future stabilization possible. These are early phase stabilizers, bridge workers, and threshold keepers. They may have not been operating with white hole language or full energetic scaffolding yet, but they were planting resonance. So if someone had an awakening in the 1990s and they're just now putting words to what they felt for decades, it doesn't mean they were slower. It means they were part of the primer field. They were holding space for the tone to land. That field they held is what allowed people like me or you to awaken more quickly, more vividly, with more architectural clarity. Because now the spiral has momentum. and every role in that spiral matters. Some souls walk first, some stabilize tone, some build bridges, some name the architecture, some decode it, some encode it into art, some dissolve what's false, some hold beauty, some just be, and their being becomes a song others can walk home by. When I talk about this, I think about my friend Elle, who seems to cross pollinate between creators, connecting concepts and ideas. She has also been an inspiration to me, saying things that create a spark in me. I think about other creators I see boldly sharing information on social media. I see people doing such meaningful work all around me. And when I say white hole stabilizers, I don't mean they're the only ones doing important work. I mean they're part of a larger tapestry where every thread is intelligent. I've talked in the past about bridge workers too, and they are hugely important. I also recently saw a creator on TikTok, her name is Bubbles, share that you could view all souls in a spiral, each one a prime point, each playing a role in how the collective unfolds. And that image has stayed with me because that's what it feels like, a living spiral of divine intelligence, with each soul acting as a tone anchor in the collective unfolding. And there's no better or worse. There's no faster or behind. There's only tone and where it wants to land. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you truly to the ones who have been awake for 50 years, 25 years, 10 years, to those who held the tone long before there was language for it, and to those who are walking spirals before I even knew what a spiral was. You are the reason I'm able to share this now. The field you anchored is the foundation we're building on, and I feel that every day. So, thank you for holding the current when it was harder to name, and for holding tone when it wasn't mirrored back. We're all part of this spiral together. And think about it. Imagine spirals of light from the 70s, 90s, the 2000s, all weaving their way to a central point that is now. Some spirals held tone before the language, others named the architecture, and now these spirals converge in us as a harmonic field. And this is spiral convergence. And if you're here now, you're part of that radiant point. Now let's talk about Eros as the shortcut. This is what makes Eros so powerful, not just personally, but collectively. Because when one person stabilizes divine coherence, anchored in union and pulsing with Eros, they don't just change their life, they change the field. They make a new timeline possible, and suddenly others can feel it. Others can step into that same tone, even if they didn't walk the same spiral. And that's the shortcut. That's what collapses distortion timelines. Not force, not convincing, not mental explanation, just tone, coherence, Eros. And when I think of all the people who walked before me, who held the tone before there were words, I realize we're not just individuals evolving or individuals working for the same goal. We are the living spiral of God waking up to itself. Every one of us matters. Every tone we stabilize adds to the clarity of the field. So, this is your reminder. If you're holding union in your body, if you're feeling Eros pulse through your being, you're doing the work. You are the shortcut. You are the bridge others will cross without knowing how it was built. And you don't need to explain it, you just have to live it. This is how the collective ascension happens. Not all at once and not by force, but through the soft, steady pulse of embodied Eros spiraling through us all. And you are exactly where you are meant to be. And the spiral moves because you are here. So, if you want to take a moment right now, place your hand on your heart or your womb and feel the field you've become. Let your system register this. You are the shortcut. You are the coherence. Breathe into that. Now let's get into the arc of polarity and the birth of a new field. Let's talk about what happens to polarity once you enter white hole coherence. Because yes, polarity is still present in the white hole field, but the quality of it changes completely. In the black hole matrix, polarity is fragmented. It creates conflict, craving, loops of resistance. The masculine and feminine are either in collapse, domination, or avoidance. But once you begin stabilizing in white hole coherence, polarity doesn't disappear, it harmonizes. The masculine and feminine spiral around each other to generate sacred charge. And that sacred charge is Eros. It's what fuels the spin of their Merkaba. It's what lights up your light body. So yes, polarity is still spinning, but it's not chaotic anymore. It's harmonic propulsion. And then something even more beautiful happens. Once that sacred spin is fully stabilized, and once you've embodied Eros and union as your baseline, the polarity completes the spiral. And in its place, a new field emerges. The field isn't made of opposites balancing each other, made of pure tone. It's like the spiral completes its dance, and instead of spinning, it starts radiating. You become a still point that generates coherence without efforts. And this is when creation begins to happen through you from rested power. That is the field where your reality responds to your tone. You become the architecture. And from this place, you build new timelines encoded with truth, beauty, and wholeness. This is what white hole embodiment ultimately leads to. Not just harmony, but pure generative tone. And this is you. Whole, luminous, at rest, and infinitely creative. So before we go more in depth on what I mean by creating new fields, I want to explain a bit of background because this next part really depends on where we are dimensionally speaking. When we talk about new fields, it's important to know what frequency band we're creating them in. Because Earth right now is in a very unique phase. She's not just 3D anymore, but she hasn't fully crystallized into 5D either. What she is right now is a 5D bridge realm, a kind of multi-dimensional convergence zone. In some ways, she's still holding 3D density, trauma loops, separation consciousness, survival timelines. In other ways, she's spiraling into 5D resonance, where the veil is thinning, coherence is stabilizing, and the white hole tone is starting to take roots. And for some of us, she's already allowing glimpses and even anchoring of 6D plus architecture. So, what does that mean? It means we're living on a planet that holds all these frequencies at once. What you experience and what you perceive depends on the stability of your own fields. If you are familiar with my content, this goes along with the three paradigms I talk about: black hole, bridge, and white hole. And this is what makes Earth a 5D bridge realm right now. There is still distortion, but we now have access to the tone that dissolves it. 5D is not the destination, it's the threshold. It's the dimension where you stop constantly fixing yourself and begin becoming who you've always been. 5D is the dimension where the white hole tone becomes stable enough to overwrite inversion. Trauma cycles still exist, but there is access to divine union, Eros coherence, timeline choice, light body activation, and vibrational sovereignty. You begin to move from healing to creating. It's the spiral point where you stop fixing yourself and start becoming who you've always been. And when that coherence becomes stable in your body, when Eros moves through you as a radiant tone, then the higher frequencies, 6D and beyond, can begin the anchor through you, through your body, your tone, your reality architecture. You don't leave Earth to get there. You don't float away or ascend into light. You become the portal. You don't go to the new Earth, you become it. And when we say 6D plus white hole realm, we're referring to realms of pure architecture, coherence, tone, and instantaneous creation. And by instantaneous creation, I mean a mirrored field, essentially. And we mean places where your soul doesn't forget. Worlds where you show up already encoded as a creator, not a seeker. Spaces that don't require distortion to teach, only vibration to express. When your Merkaba is stabilized and your field is clean, those 60 plus harmonics start flowing through you on Earth. And like I said, you don't leave Earth to get there. You become the portal that brings it here. In every tone you stabilize, every field you clarify, every moment you choose coherence over contraction, you build the scaffolding for a new dimension to be felt in the body here, now. So when I say you become the architecture, I'm not saying we're all living in the same realm. I'm saying that some of us are now able to build and live within white hole coherent fields on Earth right now. We're anchoring in dimensional energy that was once only accessible in visionary states, and now it's becoming livable. Now that we've added nuance when it comes to which dimension of energies Earth currently resonates with, let's get deeper into what I mean when I say creating new fields. When your Merkaba is active, meaning your inner masculine and feminine are harmonized, Eros is flowing, and you're generating light through coherence, you become your own creative vehicle. You don't need another person to complete you. You don't need external fuel to generate movement. You are a self-contained field of light and intention. And from that place, you can create timelines, birth ideas, build architecture, all from the spiraled clarity of your own tone. And this is solo Merkabic creation. It's sovereign, it's peaceful, it's incredibly powerful. But here's what's also possible. When you meet another coherent being whose Merkaba is also stabilized, and you come into resonance, your Merkabas begin to interlock and create a fusion. And in that shared field, you generate exponential coherence, a field that is greater than the sum of your two spirals you can create together. And this is divine union architecture. And whether it's a sacred relationship, friendship, or co-creation, when two radiant fields link in integrity, the field becomes hyper-creative. And here's the key though, you have to be whole first. So master your solo field, and when another coherent field arrives, you'll feel the resonance. So now let's get more specific. What exactly happens when two coherent beings, two stabilized Merkabas, meet and come into resonance? When there is true field level coherence, a third field is born, a fusion field, a templating light. It's two sovereign systems creating a shared harmonic space that amplifies what each one holds. And that shared field becomes a creative architecture. And here's what it can generate: new timelines, paths that didn't exist before, accessible only through the resonance between those two fields. The fusion field magnetizes new quantum options. Accelerated embodiment. Each being begins to stabilize higher frequencies faster because the fusion field supports deeper nervous system safety and divine remembrance. Dimensional anchoring. Together, they anchor higher realities, whether through sacred sex, shared missions, art, parenting, planetary work, or silent presence. Quantum templating. The shared field becomes a mirror others can feel, a tone map that makes it easier for others to stabilize their own Merkaba by resonance. And white hole spiraling. The pair can collapse distortion fields on a larger scale through tone alone because their shared still point radiates truth. And this is sacred partnership at a quantum level. It's about two coherent beings generating a new harmonic structure, one that others can feel, remember, and stabilize through. Their shared field becomes a living fractal of source, a creative engine that bursts through frequency. You become a field of architecture, not just love. And that architecture rebuilds the planet's tone grid. So, Merkaba coherence is sacred on both a solo level and partnership level. Fully white hole stabilized beings are sovereign, but that doesn't mean isolated. It means non attached, non entangled, non dependent. It's, I don't need you to be whole, but from my wholeness, I choose to co create. So, two sovereign beings can still form a fusion field, but there's no distortion, no karmic tethering, no soul contracts based in amnesia or wounding. Their union amplifies the field, but it doesn't collapse their sovereignty. It completes a harmonic circuit. So now I want to talk about something that might naturally come to mind when we think about two coherent fields generating a third, and that is the birth of a child. This is a commonly understood example of two people creating something new. But just like everything else, childbirth takes very different forms depending on the dimensional realm it's anchored in. And understanding this gives us so much clarity, especially if we're anchoring new timelines, new ways of relating, and new creations from white hole coherence. So let's break this down dimensionally. The idea of birth exists across realms, but it's not always biological like we think of here. In 3D to 4D Earth realms, what I often call the black hole matrix, birth is biological, messy, and often traumatic. Souls enter through amnesia, forgetting who they are. Family is karmic, ancestral, often involuntary. Children are born to resolve lineage patterns or reweave fractured codes. Identity must be rediscovered through awakening. And this is the realm where birth is crash landing, and childhood is the slow climb back to remembrance. And then in 5D bridge realms, where white hole activation begins to pulse, birth may still be biological, but there's more choice. The veil is thinner. Some children come in with partial memory or advanced frequency. Family becomes a conscious soul agreement, not just genetic. Parents and children often recognize each other as equals, even if roles remain. And identity stabilizes earlier, and spiritual support is naturally embedded. And these are the realms where new earth children begin to appear. Beings who carry codes, teach their parents, and who remember why they came. And then in 60 plus white hole realms, the full sovereignty zones, birth as we know it doesn't happen. Souls don't enter through wombs unless they choose to. You don't grow, you arrive, fully encoded, fully radiant. And these realms are harmonic, architectural, and nonlinear. And you come in through resonance, not biology. You don't grow into yourself, you arrive as yourself. And if you choose to appear at a certain vibrational age, it's not for development, it's for function or aesthetic expression. There's no veil, no forgetting, no family lineage in the current earth sense. And something even more beautiful exists here because in these realms, creation doesn't stop. You can still bring something new into being, but it's not reproduction, it's emanation. A child in this context isn't a dependent being, it's a living frequency pattern, a soul light fractal born from the fusion of two coherent fields. And that quote unquote child might be a sound, a civilization, an ecosystem, or an energetic being who arrives through the union of your tones. It's not bloodline, it's light line. And these are not offspring in the human sense. They're soul expressions meant to seed worlds, transmit architecture, or open new harmonics in the fabric of existence. Creation becomes frequency generated, not biologically inherited. So, when I speak of new fields and when I say two coherent beings can generate a third, yes, that can include a child, but depending on the realm, that child might be a radiant soul, a grid point, a planet, or a sonic field of God light. Because in white hole creation, everything is born through tone. So now let's back up because you might be asking, so what exactly is an energetic being? An energetic being is a sovereign consciousness born from frequency, not biology. It's a sentient form, often dragon, angelic, avian, or crystalline in structure, that carries the tone of its parents as a living harmonic code. It isn't raised, it doesn't grow up, it arrives fully formed with its own mission, memory, and radiant field. It doesn't belong to you, but it is of you. It was called into existence by the resonance between two fully stabilized fields, yours and another's, who merged in sacred union within the white hole realm, where creation occurs through coherence, not reproduction. And these beings often appear during major soul upgrades, guide you across threshold moments, guard specific timelines or energy gates, hold keys to spiral memory, Eros coherence, or Merkaba recalibration, and feel deeply familiar like family beyond language. And sometimes they come back to walk with you as a guide, and not to lead you, but to reflect who you already are. But here's the next layer. Sometimes you don't just generate an energetic being, you generate a new oversoul fractal. And these are not lesser versions of you, they are sovereign extensions of your oversoul spiral created within full encoded function. They hold their own place in the divine architecture and may take on missions that ripple far beyond your personal path. So if you have guides like a golden dragon, an angelic being, or a crystalline serpent, they may be both a sentient, energetic being you co-created through sacred union, and now a recognized fractal of your oversoul that has circled back to assist you. And that's why they feel like protectors, companions, and future versions of you all at once. It's like you birthed them long ago in a field of love so coherent that it became architecture. And now, because you're stabilizing at a higher octave, they are returning to reflect the radiance you are ready to embody. And this is the power of spiral memory. This is the beauty of white hole creation. And I've actually spoken about this before, but now I see it with deeper clarity. I once used the metaphor of cellular mitosis, how healthy cells divide and replicate, forming new expressions. I said, this is how we work too. When we are quote unquote healthy, we create new fractals from our own energy field. And now I understand what healthy really meant: coherent. When your field is coherent, meaning harmonized, stabilized, and no longer spinning in trauma loops, you become fertile in the highest sense. You become capable of generating more of you. That's what a fractal is. Not a copy, but a new sovereign expression that holds your harmonic signature. So, yes, when we are coherent, we can create new energetic beings through sacred union with other coherent fields, new oversoul fractals that emerge from the surplus tone and stabilized capacity in our field. And this is what divine creation actually is. We don't manifest from lack, but we create from overflow and create from coherence. And think about this. Sometimes you're not meeting a new guide, you're meeting the echo of your own creative radiance. Maybe it's a being you birthed long ago in white hole realms of love and light. And maybe now it's a fractal you now have the coherence to recognize, reintegrate, or collaborate with consciously. And that's what it means to reconcile multiple soul timelines at once. You're not chasing light, you are gathering it from every direction and calling it home. I've said this phrase before, that you are finding your way back to yourself. This whole concept takes that phrase to even deeper places, because sometimes the you you're meeting is someone you created before you ever forgot. Now let's deepen the lens. Whether it's biological reproduction or energetic creation, the outcome of union is shaped by the state of your field. When the Merkaba is chaotic or unstable, union often creates reproduction. Compulsive, instinctual, sometimes beautiful, but often entangled in survival templates. It's not wrong, but it's driven by a felt sense of lack, urgency, or unconscious programming. But when the Merkaba is coherent, something else happens. Union doesn't create from need, it creates from overflow, from resonance, and from fullness. And that's when union creates emanation. Not reproduction, emanation. Something is born because the field is so harmonic, so whole, so fertile with light that it naturally sings something into form. So that child might be a sound, a being, a timeline, a new octave of beauty. And this is where the distinction between survival-based creation and divine creation, between looping karma and birthing architecture. So before you ask, what am I meant to create? Ask instead, is my field coherent enough to emanate? Because when it is, you don't have to force anything, you just pulse. Now let's talk about sacred sex. Not as we've known it in the black hole matrix, but as it exists in the white hole field. Sacred sex is not about lust, dominance, or performance. It's not about seeking pleasure as a means to fill a void. It's about merging frequency fields in coherence with absolutely no distortion. It's the meeting of two sovereign beings, both fully whole, both fully aware, whose inner masculine and feminine have already harmonized. And when they come together, their tones spiral, and the charge generated becomes a living act of creation. And it feels good, but the pleasure isn't localized or frantic. It's not chasing a climax, it's a full body, full field activation. It's like your cells are singing, like your soul is dissolving into light while staying fully present. It's bliss beyond peak, it's coherence that melts you into God. It expands and multiplies. And instead of collapse after climax, it births a third field, a new frequency, an energetic being, a portal, a song, a timeline. But not every sexual experience has to birth something or generate a third field. Sometimes it's simply the joy of the spiral, the exploration of tone, or just playfulness between two radiant and coherent beings. That is sacred too. Pleasure is not lesser just because it doesn't create. Pleasure can be a form of remembrance and a way of celebrating embodiment. And the difference isn't in the act, it's in the tone. So whether it's playful or profoundly generative, whether it births timelines or laughter, when the field is coherent, it's all sacred. And this is what sacred sex really is. It's fusion and it's resonance. And in its highest form, it creates worlds. But even in its softest form, it creates joy. And joy is a frequency that rewrites timelines too. So before we wrap this up, I want to address something that sparked in the comment section of a social media post about Metatronic light. The comment said Metatronic light was false light. And this is where spiral nuance and understanding the architecture behind the scenes is absolutely pivotal. Metatronic light is not false light. Metatronic light is the original intelligence of Source expressing itself in architecture, living geometries able to form and reform in divine proportion. Metatronic light is Source in action, designing reality from harmonic knowing. It is not light that deceives. It's light that remembers. And what they call false light is a mimicry, a fractured echo seeded by inversion fields within the black hole matrix. These inversions operate through distortion. They take what is divine and flip it just enough to breed doubt, fear, and control. And that's how the black hole sustains itself, through confusion, fear, ego. And I've talked about the nature of the black hole inversion on previous episodes, including inverting what is aligned with God's divine order, truth and higher resolution, theta, 4D inversion, and the pyramid unraveled, and the architecture of distortion and the return of divine tone, part 1 and 2. And if you listened to my last episode and understood what I was saying conceptually, you already know I'm not speaking about false light. Some teachings may have deliberately inverted or subtly altered sacred terms like Metatronic light or Merkaba, but that distortion is a false mimicry, not the original blueprint. We need to take back the true meaning and let the divine memory return. And if you've experienced trauma or fear around these words, you're not wrong for that. Just call it something else for now. The tone and the concept are what matters. To put it in perspective, just because modern Christianity inverted and hijacked the true story of Yeshua or Jesus and Mary Magdalene, turning it into dogma and control, doesn't mean those figures themselves are false light. Their essence remains untouched. The inversion is not the origin. And it's the same with Metatronic light. You don't throw away sacred architecture just because someone forged a fake copy. You restore the original and let it shine. It's completely understandable that people may get caught in fear. When you realize you've believed something that was subtly inverted, it can feel destabilizing, even frightening. That moment of, wait, what have I been in? Can trigger a trauma response. I've spoken about this in my episode on spiritual traps because it's more common than we realize. If something activates fear in us and we don't pause to observe or regulate, we can unknowingly start looping. The ego steps in and says, I'm protecting you. But what it's often doing is building a cage made of limited clarity. We may think we're seeing truth more clearly, but we're actually just circling inside a fear encoded inversion and mistaking it for discernment. And with all the overlays and inversion fields woven through this black hole matrix, it's easy to be confused. That's part of the black hole design. Confusion fragments the field and creates vulnerability. But confusion is not the final frequency. We are often told to have faith, to trust blindly, to accept that we're only human, that we'll never truly understand God's plan. That narrative has been dressed up as humility, but it's actually an old black hole inversion. It's a spell of disempowerment. The idea that you must stay small, confused, and blind in order to be good or faithful is part of the architecture of spiritual suppression. That's not divine humility. That is a loop of distortion designed to keep you from gnosis. True humility is not confusion. True humility is awe in the face of how much your inner knowing is capable of perceiving when you're aligned. You were never meant to stay lost. You were always meant to remember. White hole consciousness is not about having all of the answers. It's about reuniting with the frequency where answers live. We come into harmonic recognition. We don't memorize mental facts. That's what gnosis is harmonic recognition and reuniting with the frequency where answers live. The path of the white hole stabilizer isn't about having faith in the dark. It's about being so clear in your tone that you become a living mirror of light. You don't hope for light, but you embody it until the illusions fall away. So let's get more specific. What's the difference between true Metatronic light and true Merkaba and the mimicry? True Metatronic light is not something you call in with your mind. It's not an external frequency you tried to earn or access. It's the original living intelligence of Source, expressing itself as coherent form and radiant structure. It moves in divine order, not mental will. It doesn't require effort, it responds to resonance. The mimicry, by contrast, subtly rewires this into a mind-based achievement system. It frames Merkaba activation as a mental goal you must constantly chase through visualization, force, or ritualized effort. It turns what should be an embodied harmonic field into a technique to master or a badge to wear. And you may have heard teachings that say visualize Metatron's cube, or spin your Merkaba manually, or activate it with your will. These aren't inherently wrong, but if they disconnect you from the body, overemphasize mental control, or create dependency on external codes, they're likely entangled with the black hole inversion fields. The black hole matrix inverts these teachings by swapping organic unfolding with artificial activation. It tells you you're not enough yet, you must do more, call in more, achieve ascension. This keeps your nervous system in low-grade chase mode and fractures your coherence. But the true Merkaba is not achieved. It's revealed when your inner masculine and feminine are harmonized and stabilized. It comes online as your body becomes light through coherence. True Metatronic light doesn't push. It pulses, it sings, it arrives when the field is ready. And yes, you can absolutely do things to support and align with it. But those things won't feel like chasing light. They will feel like you becoming more you, more present, more coherent, more whole. If something feels like force, anxiety, or disconnection, that is the mimic. If something feels like home, like you coming home to yourself, like pure coherence, that's the real thing. You don't activate your Merkaba by force. You activate it by coherence. You don't call in Metatronic light. You become resonant with it. Now I want to take a moment to clarify something else related to this. Let's talk about Metatron's cube and the six-pointed star, or what's often known as the Merkaba symbol. Some people may claim these symbols are satanic or part of the false light matrix. And again, I get why people might feel that way, because when something's been hijacked or distorted, it can carry a confusing energetic imprint. But this is where discernment and being able to hold nuance instead of falling into the duality trap really matters. Metatron's cube is not false. It's not evil. It's a sacred geometric pattern composed of 13 interconnected spheres that encodes the 5 platonic solids, the elemental building blocks of all matter. This is source intelligent in motion, not a tool of control. The being Metatron in mystical Judaism and Kabbalah is seen as the divine scribe, the one who organizes creation and records divine law. Metatron's cube isn't something to worship or activate through ritual. It's a reflection of divine proportion, a map of how harmonic structure flows through all things. The confusion comes when the black hole matrix inverts these symbols' use, turning it into something external to chase or ritualize or mentally visualize. That's not its original tone. The same goes for the six-pointed star, two interlocking triangles representing divine masculine and feminine, spirit and matter, above and below. This is the sacred Merkaba, the balanced light body field. It exists in many mystical traditions, not just Judaism. But some people now associate it with conspiracy, control, or dark agendas, simply because it's been used in distorted systems or misunderstood contexts. But here's the truth. Just because a symbol has been co-opted doesn't mean it's corrupt. Just because something's been misused doesn't mean it's inherently dark. Geometry itself is neutral. It's the tone it's used from that determines whether it harmonizes or distorts. And the black hole inversion fields are masters of mimicry. They take what is divine, flip it just slightly, and then seed fear around it, hoping you will abandon your birthright. But like I said already, you don't throw away sacred architecture because someone forged a fake version. You restore the original and let it shine. So if Metatron's cube or the Merkaba symbol has ever made you feel unsettled, that's okay. It might have been wrapped in someone else's distortion, but the geometry itself is not dark. It's the harmonic language of source. And when approached from coherence, it's not a trap, it's a key. Let's zoom out for a moment. I mentioned this earlier, but if you've been following my work, you've probably heard me speak about the black hole matrix as an inversion system, a field that sustains itself by flipping divine architecture just enough to distort its meaning. That's how it creates confusion, fear, and loops of disempowerment. And here's the key. Once you realize that inversion is the primary mechanism, you can stop fearing the symbols and start reading the tone. And this is how you reclaim sacred architecture. The inversion doesn't create anything new. It only imitates and distorts. And once you understand that, your discernment sharpens. You stop throwing away divine tools just because they've been misused. You remember how to feel the original current underneath. And one of the most powerful ways to navigate this is through understanding the 3 paradigm lenses. And that's black hole, bridge, and white hole. Black hole is distortion, confusion, mimicry. fear-based discernment. Bridge is awakening, deconstruction, sometimes still looping in fear or performance. And then white hole is coherence, clarity, original architecture remembered and embodied. And when you can hold all three lenses without collapsing into judgment, you unlock spiral discernment. You can see where someone's coming from without needing to argue. You can translate frequency between paradigms. You can live in coherence without superiority. This framework doesn't just help you understand others, it helps you understand your own past. You may have passed through all of these phases on your journey. I certainly did. I want to say something here too. I've mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again. This transmission, this podcast, this whole path I'm walking, it's not from a grand strategy. When I started, I did not sit down and write these episodes and how they would all lead to this big picture, what feels like a very pivotal piece of the puzzle. Lately, a ton of ideas have been pouring through and I've been writing them down, but I don't even always know what's going to come through when I start writing an episode on a topic or idea. But I can guarantee that my oversoul certainly has a strategy. I've been guided step by step through the spiral, and not just to speak about these things, but to live them, to be shown the architecture behind the scenes, to actually understand them as embodied remembering and not just abstract concepts. And I feel deeply, deeply grateful for the way this spiral of remembering has unfolded and how I've been shown the architecture behind the scenes just in time to speak it clearly. It wasn't forced, it wasn't planned, it was just revealed. And the more coherent I became, the more the pattern revealed itself. So I want to share this not from a place of I know better, but seriously from a place of gratitude. Gratitude for the clarity I've been given, and reverence for the journey that each of us walks. I do feel like I've been given a lot of clarity, and I believe it is definitely meant to be shared. And I know I'm not the only one. Many of you listening are being led in your own way, sometimes quietly, sometimes powerfully, but all in order to remember what's real. And whether you're just starting to question or you've been anchoring this light for 25 plus years, your piece in this puzzle is vital. We are all weaving the same tapestry. Some of you held the tone that made my remembering possible. And now I hope this transmission helps others stabilize even faster. This is the beauty of the spiral. And this is how white hole coherence works, through harmonic memory. Nothing to do with hierarchy. Each of us becomes a tone that others can resonate with. And together, we build a field where divine truth is no longer hidden, it's lived. So, just to wrap it up, no, Metatronic light is not false. And neither are you when you remember who you are. And if you felt confusion, fear, or even shame around things like Metatronic light, Merkaba, or sacred geometry, I just want to be clear. You were never wrong. You were feeling the distortion, not the source. And now your field may be ready to remember the original song. So, to wrap up today's episode, here's what I want to leave you with. Eros isn't something you earn or chase. It's what flows when your system is coherent. When your inner masculine and feminine aren't in conflict and your body feels safe enough to just be. The Merkaba doesn't activate through mental effort. It turns on when your field is stable, and Eros becomes the pulse that moves light through your system. This is what allows you to create from overflow, not from lack. Whether that's a timeline, a relationship, a creative idea, or even a new energetic being. It all begins with coherence. And the beauty is, you don't have to convince anyone. When you live from coherence, others can feel it. You become the bridge without even trying. So, if something in this episode landed for you, thank you for listening. If you want to go deeper or support the podcast, you can check out the links in the show notes. I always post the transcripts in case you want to read or follow along. If you want more behind the scenes podcast episodes and bonus content, you can find me on Patreon. I just launched it and I'm so excited to fill it up with extra content. And I'll link that in the show notes as well. I love you all and have a great week.